What's up, fight fans? I'm Jim Grieshaber. Call me Gries, and this is Cage Side Seat on MMA Weekly, the best MMA talk with the biggest names in the sport from the best seat in the house on the world's most trusted news and entertainment source in mixed martial arts, MMA Weekly. And we got a big one this week as the UFC is back on Fight Island in Abu Dhabi for UFC 253. Adesanya versus Costa, 19-0 versus 13-0. Maybe the most anticipated fight of the entire year. DC Stipe 3 right there with it, but this one certainly, we've been waiting for it a long time, and you remember last year in Australia when Israel Adesanya knocked out Robert Whittaker to get the belt, and then Paulo Costa was sitting cage side. You had the whole balloon animal thing, the back and forth, the insults. It's been a long time coming for these two great 185-pounders to get in the octagon and get it on this week in Abu Dhabi, and we bring you wall-to-wall coverage, obviously, and what a great time it is to be an MMA fan. Speaking of which, we hope you enjoyed it last week, and this week is week 2 with our expert handicapper, Lee Sterling of ParamountSports.com. Lee went 5-1-1 last week on his picks for us. He's won 17 of 20 UFC fight cards since May when they came back after the first lockdown. And Lee joins me now from Miami, Florida at his world headquarters. And Lee, 5-1-1, man. No better way to get it started. It doesn't get much better than that, man. Good to have you back again this week.
Yeah, that's what you want to do. You want to win right off the bat. And it's only one fight we lost. We took a shot, and sometimes you got to do that. You don't want to lay 450 on a favorite. You sit those out, or you take a shot at the underdog, because if you lose a 450 or 500 favorite, your whole night is done. So we took a shot, but every other fight came through, and I think anyone would take a 5-1-1 record and winning 17 out of 20 cards since the start of May.
Yeah, you think? Literally 17 for 20 since May, and then 5-1-1 last week. And just think, Lee, the people who are riding with you and the money they're making right now, and you watching, checking it out, MMA fan, throwing a little action down, making it more interesting for yourself. Following Lee Sterling's lead is a good way to have success when you're putting a little action down on these fights. He's one of the top football handicappers for 25-plus years, one of the best in the world at putting down wagers and making things happen and making money for people with his picks at ParamountSports.com. And he's going to give you an incredible special in just a few minutes, how you can take advantage of his picks and do it for an incredible price right here today on MMA Weekly with Cage Side Seat. And Lee, let's dive right in. Get it? Fight Island reference, dive right in. At light heavyweight on the prelims, Alexa Kamore against William Knight. Now, William Knight just destroyed Cody Brundage on Dana White's Contender Series and said, hey, boss, put me in right away. Send me to Fight Island. He gets his wish. He enters the octagon against Kamore, who won his debut impressively over Justin Ledet recently. This one at light heavyweight, like we said, -170. Kamore the favorite here.
So sometimes a fighter isn't going to start from the first round and dominate. And I think this might be one of those fights. I think William Knight is going to probably lose the first round, and then I think he's going to come on. He's going to get stronger. So I like a bunch of underdogs in this card. I think he's going to end up getting a knockout in the second or third round. I'm going to take a shot here. William Knight +140. Just think that he's going to get stronger as the fight goes on. And like I said, sometimes people panic because it's only 3 rounds, but he might be one of those guys that can lose the first round and either win the second and the third or get a knockout in one of those rounds.
Going to be an interesting fight for sure. Kamore, by the way, a teammate of Stipe Miocic, so you know he's going to keep the nose to that grindstone and work hard just like Stipe does in Ohio. Ohio. Going to be football season soon for those fans of the Ohio State Buckeyes. Stipe would love that shout-out right there. Our next matchup, Lee, is on the main card at featherweight. Zubaira Tukhugov against Akeem Dawodu. And Dawodu, of course, mean Akeem, has a big history in MMA and was in the PFL World Series of Fighting and couldn't get fights there, comes to the UFC with a lot of fanfare and gets destroyed by Danny Henry. Put an end to that hype train pretty fast, which happens often in the UFC. And Zubaira Tukhugov, you remember him from running in the cage and trying to attack Conor McGregor during that infamous brawl at UFC 229, McGregor against Khabib, and just one of those unbelievable nights that you'll never forget. But Tukhugov is a beast. He missed weight by 5 pounds. He's going to forfeit 20% of his purse, but a big-time favorite in this fight nonetheless at -135 over Dawodu.
I think that Dawodu is technical. I think that he's a good striker, but sometimes you got to take chances, and I notice he rarely takes chances here. I think Tukhugov is going to outstrike him. I think he's better on the ground, and I think he's the right side of this fight. I think he at minus 135, don't have to lay a whole lot. I think he's going to get the win. I don't know how he's going to get the win. Sometimes you can kind of figure that out, but this might be one of those that he might win, late in the second, early in the third, or he might win by a decision. But I just think by Dawodu not taking chances, it might hurt him. And you got to take chances. You got to fight to win. And I think Takugov minus 135 is the right side here.
Takugov, so good and so obviously great on the ground, and he's going to be looking to grapple and take it down. Also a really good striker as well. Next up, women's bantamweight division. Ketlen Vieira, 10-1. That one came in her last fight. She was undefeated and just destroying everybody. Think about the dominating performances, the submission and the unanimous decision over Sarah McMahon and Kat Zingano, two really well-established and talented veterans in the UFC. It all came crashing down literally against Irene Aldana, and that was a brutal knockout in a fight that Vieira was winning. We have to see how she's going to come back and respond to that against Sijara Sarge Ebanks. And Ebanks was really doing well at flyweight at 125, came very close to getting a sniff at that belt, and then had problems with making weight, and the scale was not her friend. So she moves up to bantamweight, didn't have a lot of success there, but she is coming off a big win over Julia Avila, minus 180. Ketlen Vieira, the favorite to move that needle and pick up win number 11.
Hey, if you want to watch a knockout, that is a knockout. I mean, it was a violent knockout. And on top of that, sometimes after you get knocked out like that, you're just not the same. So you look at her record, and it's really good. But sometimes after that one big loss, you're never the same here. I personally don't think she has many good wins. I think Sarge, and that's, Ebanks' nickname, I think that outside of, making weight and having troubles there, I think she's rededicated herself. And sometimes, these fighters, they find themselves, and I think she's found herself. And I just think that she's coming on. I think she's fought tough fighters. And in this weight class, I think she can be a force here. So I just think the odds here are too high. I think it should be almost a pick 'em. I'm going to go with Ebanks here, plus 165 to pull the.
All right, he's Lee Sterling of ParamountSports.com. I'm Jim Grieshaber. Lee's going to have an incredible special for you at the end of our picks. Once we're done with that main event, Adesanya versus Costa. Of course, you have the light heavyweight championship bout between Dominic Reyes and Jan Blachowicz, who I became really good buddies with out in Albuquerque, trying to pronounce his name in February. You can look up that interview on Cage Side Seat YouTube or Facebook. But, man, that was a lot of fun with Jan and, of course, Dominic Reyes in that Jon Jones fight. A lot of people think he should already be the champion, but he gets his shot, and whether it's a defense or a chance to win the belt doesn't really matter at this point, because if he wins this week, he walks out with the belt either way. Lee Sterling, Jim Grieshaber, Cage Side Seat on MMA Weekly. Continuing on with our weekly handicapping show and segment with Lee. And let's move on, Lee, to the next bout on the main card, 125ers. The flyweights, man, the division that Triple C saved. I'm going to give my boy credit for that every single time that comes up. Kai Kara-France, don't blink, against Brandon Rival, and Brandon with a big win, obviously, over Tim Elliott. He's a great grappler, but oftentimes waits for his opponents to take it to the ground and does his work there, but that's kind of counterintuitive to what a lot of the great grapplers do, where they look to bring the fight to the ground. In his case, it's been the opposite. But Kara-France, of course, blasted his way on the scene on TUF 2016 versus Terrence Mitchell, looking to put it all together. He's a big-time favorite at minus 240 over Royval here.
I think that Kara-France is the better striker. No great wins on his resume. Whereas Royval, if you saw his last fight against Elliott, he was upset. He got the win, and he was upset. He didn't think he performed up to the highest level, and I like that. He's not a great wrestler, but he's a really good grappler. And if you look at his record, 11 wins, 3 TKOs or KOs, 1 decision, and 7 submissions. He is a really good submission specialist. And if he gets Kara-France down, I think it's over. So I think that Royval is the right side here. This is another big underdog, plus 195. I think the odds should be maybe minus 150. I think the odds are way off. I think another guy, Brandon Royval, is really ascending, and all 4 losses were by decision. And that kind of tells me something. if it goes to a decision, I think actually Royval will win this fight here. He just has to take him down a couple times. If he gets him down twice, one of those 2 times, he's going to get the submission. I like Brandon Royval here, plus 195.
All right, we're getting closer, and that big-time special coming your way. Follow Lee Sterling's lead. ParamountSports.com is the website. He's going to have some picks for you at the end and a great price, great deal just for you. Cage side seat on MMA Weekly. Our viewers, our family, right here every week. He's going to have an awesome special for you. This week's is coming up right after we break down the main event, Adesanya versus Costa. Lee. But first, the co-main event, the light heavyweight championship bout that everyone's waiting for. Jon Jones moving up to heavyweight to test his GOAT status against Stipe Miocic or Francis Ngannou or whoever has the belt after that fight, which we have to assume is next, but you never know what's going to happen. Either way, Jones vacates his belt, felt like he had done everything he could do in the light heavyweight division, barely surviving against Dominic Reyes his last time out. Reyes feeling like he should have been the champion. Well, Reyes now has that opportunity against Jan Blachowicz, who earned his way into this fight with a big-time finish over Corey Anderson in February in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I sat cage side for that fight, and let me tell you, Jan Blachowicz, unbelievable power. I saw him lay out Luke Rockhold as well. Everything changed for him, Blachowicz, against Ilir Latifi and obviously Jared Cannonier, and then he just kept it going when he starched Rockhold and destroyed Corey Anderson to get to this point. Dominic Reyes, of course, you know, has big-time wins over guys like Ovin St. Preux and Volkan Ozdemir, 2 of the top contenders in the division who have both had title shots in the past. Reyes, a big favorite here at minus 280. The former college football standout against Blachowicz, which that Eastern Bloc mentality, loves that straight grind and likes to stay at a distance with the jab. But Reyes, with his kicking game, can penetrate that and maybe take away his bread and butter. So interesting here to see what will happen with a big-time line in favor of Dominic Reyes, but either way, I don't think many people will argue. These 2 guys, maybe Thiago Santos, but these 2 guys are the 2 best light heavyweights in the world without Jon Jones and the belt on the line this week.
You know, I don't have a problem with having a new champion. That's what makes it fun, always new faces. And I just have a feeling that Dominic Reyes is going to be the champion, and he's going to be the champion for a long time. I think he is that good. So I think he's getting better, just scratching the surface. Some guys, depending whether they're 28, 30, 32, you can see him starting to figure it out here. And Blachowicz, hey, he beat Corey Anderson. I give him credit here. But I just don't know if he can control this fight. I have a feeling that Reyes is going to catch him. Blachowicz likes to use the jab, and he has, I think, a 1-inch reach advantage. But I still think that Reyes, because of the kicking and also he's long, I think he might be able to control it from the outside. So both fighters are extremely good. I don't have a problem with having a new champion. That's what makes it fun, having some new blood. And if Jon Jones goes up to the heavyweight class, I think he's going to have to be more active to win fights, and that will be fun. But I just think that Reyes is just starting to scratch the surface here. And give Blachowicz, give him credit. You know, he beat Corey Anderson, who's a tough fighter. But I just think that Reyes is on maybe another different level, and he has the capability to maybe be a champion for quite a few years. So I'm going to lay the 280. Don't like to lay big numbers, but in this case I will. I'm going to lay the 280 like I did last week on one of the fights. And I think Reyes is going to get the win, whether it's going to be by knockout, submission, TKO, or KO.
All right, so Lee has Dominic Reyes walking out of the octagon on Fight Island with the championship belt at 205 pounds. Strange to see or think of somebody else having that belt around their waist besides Jon Jones or Daniel Cormier, who was the keeper of the belt every time Jones got in trouble. And I hate to label DC like that. He's a great all-time champion, but Jon Jones, that's his division since way back. We're talking about carrying it from era to era, from the Machida, Rashad, Rampage, Shogun era, all the way through now to what Dominic Reyes and Jan Blachowicz hope will be the beginning of their era at 205, and that's going to be an incredible fight. Lee's going with Reyes. Don't forget, we're just moments away from that great special. Lee Sterling, Paramount Sports, one of the best handicappers in the world. Ride with Lee, help you make money, and have a lot of fun in the process watching UFC 253. Great special coming your way at ParamountSports.com. We're going to tell you about that in just a minute, but first, Lee, the main event, man. UFC 253, Israel Adesanya, the last style bender, against Paulo Costa, the eraser. Someone's O's got to go. 19-0 versus 13-0. World-class kickboxer, Israel Adesanya. Over 100 matches there, but look at his rise in the UFC. You think about that time when he fought Brad Tavares. It wasn't that long ago. He had some things to clean up. Looked amazing in that fight. Brunson felt the wrath, and then obviously Anderson Silva, and then he just kept it going and then won the interim belt in that 5-round war against Kelvin Gastelum, my buddy KG on the show this week. But when you look at what he did in that fight, Adesanya was down in that 4th round and almost ready to be finished by KG. Battled back, fought through it, and ended that fight on top of Gastelum in the middle of the octagon, and that thing just ended at the horn. So 5-round war, he's proven he can do that. And then, of course, he smashed Robert Whittaker to win the regular belt, not the interim belt, and become the undisputed champ in Australia last year in front of Whittaker's home fans. The city kickboxing product really been amazing in the UFC so far. And, of course, he defended it against Yoel Romero this March in Vegas, the last event at T-Mobile Arena before the shutdown with coronavirus, and now he'll defend against Costa. So a lot of people attacking Izzy for that performance against Yoel, but he outlasted him and he won that fight in 5 rounds. For Paulo Costa, 13-0, not a lot of UFC fights. He's destroyed everyone in his path on the feet. His toughest challenge was thought to be Johnny Hendricks, but at 185, Johnny Hendricks, who had so much trouble making weight at 170, was pretty much, I think, done with the sport at that point. An easier win for Costa than a lot of people thought. His next one against Uriah Hall, maybe the closest comparison to Adesanya here. Uriah Hall, a great striker and kickboxer, and he did do some damage in that fight against Paulo. Paulo proving his chin is pretty solid, very solid in that fight, coming back and getting the finish over Uriah Hall. And then against Yoel Romero, Paulo Costa with a big-time performance in Anaheim last year. He's had troubles with USADA, but he's here now ready to take home that belt, as he says, and become the champion at 185. The 3-round fight against Romero in August last year in Anaheim was the one where he really got tested. He got hit a lot in that fight. His takedown defense against the silver medal wrestler was absolutely phenomenal. So the biggest question here, in my mind, you have the kickboxing of Izzy. He's a great counterpuncher. That's number one, which seems to benefit him as Paulo has always been really aggressive. So Paulo's got to watch that counter, same ones that rocked Whittaker in his fight. And Izzy is great at that. But for Paulo Costa, he's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu who's really been doing a lot of wrestling with Captain Eric Albarracin, the Pitbull brothers, Olympic gold medalist and 2-division champ in the UFC, Henry Cejudo. His ground game is underrated, but we haven't seen it. That's why it's underrated. A Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, if this one goes to the ground, he's got a big advantage. Izzy's got the advantage, I think, in the counter-punching and counter-attacking with his kicks. But this one, a 5-round title fight. Paulo hasn't proven that he can do that yet. Izzy has definitely proven that he can now twice. And those wins over, obviously, big-time Kelvin Gastelum and then the defense against Yoel Romero. So will Paulo Costa have the gas tank to go 5 rounds against Israel Adesanya, or will he have to finish him early? That's the question here.
This is one of the toughest fights I've ever seen on a main card to figure out. And sometimes you can bet 4, 5, 6 other fights. And personally, I'm not wagering on the fight. I'm going to give you a side, which I think is the right side based on the odds. But sometimes you just got to sit back and enjoy the fight. Now, Adesanya is great. Like I said, both of them have 2 or 3 things they do extremely well. But one of the things that might give Costa the edge here is Gastelum got to Adesanya. In fact, the striking edge was only 107 to 91 in that fight with Adesanya took on Gastelum. So he wasn't dominant, and I expected him to be more dominant in that fight. And also, Yoel Romero, he didn't want to fight. So Costa's going to fight. The question is, can he last the entire fight? If it goes 5 rounds, I don't see him winning the fight. But I think that Costa might catch him. And it might be something that we don't expect. It might be a spinning back fist. It might be a kick. It might be a punch coming off the ropes. It might be something that we've never seen before. I think it's going to be a great fight. I'm going to take a shot. Like I said, I'm not personally wagering on this fight. I have 6 other wagers already put in, but I'm going to take Costa here plus the 150.
And new, says Lee Sterling, plus 150 for the eraser. Paulo Costa over Israel Adesanya. And looking at that fight, man, it really could go either way. One of the toughest fights, as Lee said, to pick in a long time. All right, guys, here we are. We're at that time and that point in the show when we're going to give you that special right now. You're not going to believe this one from Lee Sterling at Paramount Sports. You can buy his picks, go into battle armed and ready, and dangerous for that matter, for UFC 253 to get your action in, and you can do that. Lee's going to tell you how to do it in just a couple of minutes. But, man, Adesanya versus Costa, Reyes versus Blachowicz, Diego Sanchez is a huge underdog on this card. If you feel like riding a little bit, you got a lot of options there with Lee Sterling and Paramount Sports. And with us here, cage side seat on MMA Weekly, it's UFC 253, and it's an unbelievable fight card top to bottom. And if you're going to throw some money down, if you're going to make it interesting, if you're going to try to make it a little bit of a supplemental income, having some fun at the same time, you want to go into battle armed, right? If you're going into a sword fight, not that these are feudal times, but if you were, you would want the sword, you would want the shield, right? If you're going into a meeting and you're negotiating against people, you want all the numbers, all the data. You want to go in armed and ready to go. Same thing when you're betting on the fights. You want to go in with Lee Sterling. You ride with him throughout the UFC fights throughout the year. I almost said season like football, but you go through fight after fight and week after week, and overall the percentages take over, and you end up winning money in the long run. And just like the stock market, you know, it's a crapshoot, but unbelievable opportunity to work with one of the best handicappers in the world and follow him into battle. Lee Sterling, a big-time special for you this week. People need to follow you into battle to be armed, my friend. I feel protected when I walk into that battle behind you, and my money's on the line.
So this is what I'm going to do. For anyone else who goes to my website, ParamountSports.com, the 5 selections are $100. For MMA Weekly followers only, if they go to ParamountSports.com, they're going to click on Purchase Picks, and they're going to see 5 selections, $100. If you watch this entire video, I'm going to give you a special. Use the coupon code MMA Weekly. Just type in MMA Weekly, and you're going to get $50 off. So instead of 5 selections for $100, 5 for $50. So just my way of saying thank you. I want to introduce myself to you. I've had an incredible, I don't think anyone in the country can document their picks like I have for the last 20 cards. And we're not talking about like we did have some 3 and 2s, but we had a couple 5-0, a bunch of 4-1, 5-1 cards, and we had a 5-1 card last week. How do they get it? ParamountSports.com. Click on Purchase Picks. 5 selections, normally $100. Put in coupon code MMA Weekly. Once you type that in, it'll take the price down to $50. All the selections will pop up once you pay. It's a pop-up, and you take those plays and you play in the 24 states now where betting is legal. You can play them there. You can play them with your local bookmaker or go offshore. Plenty of great offshore places to place your wagers. I think almost every single offshore now has UFC selections that are up and available to bet, and usually they're up by Monday or Tuesday, these selections. So they're up. We're ready to go. We're ready to keep winning. ParamountSports.com is the place to go. Coupon code MMA Weekly for all the listeners who checked out this video. We're going to have some fun every single week, and we're going to win.
5-1-1 last week, 17 of 20 for fight cards this year. He's been a winner. That's Lee Sterling, Paramount Sports.
And I also do football. That started off as my specialty. I played college quarterback and been doing it for 27 years. Not quite as long in the MMA, but we've won all 3 weeks in the football. And it's tough with this pandemic. Not many people can take the time to research who's not going to be playing, the strengths and the weaknesses. I could have gone into coaching, but enjoy this much more. If they want to get involved there, you can pick a package and sign up there for football for the weekend, just $97. And I rate all my MMA fights and my football selections from 10 to 50 units. We have a 50-unit parlay in the MMA and the UFC on Saturday night. We have a 40 to 50 unit football. I don't think I've ever had both a 40 to 50 unit in MMA and also football in the same weekend. ParamountSports.com is the place to go. You want to start winning.
I told you it was a great special. 5 picks for $50. Regular price is $100. 5 for $50 at ParamountSports.com. Put your wager in and put in the code MMA Weekly. Cage side seat on MMA Weekly, the best MMA talk with the biggest names in the sport from the best seat in the house. There are your picks for UFC 253. Man, just these fights. Adesanya, Costa, and Reyes and Blachowicz. Just those 2 fights alone. The rest of the card is stacked as well. The UFC continuing to lead from the front in the world of sports right now. Don't forget, check out my interviews with Captain Eric Albarracin and Kelvin Gastelum breaking down the main event as well. Adesanya versus Costa for the middleweight championship. Lee Sterling, 17 out of 20 winners. Fight cards, that is, since May, UFC-wise, and 5-1-1 last week. 5 for $50 on the picks. 5 for $50 on the picks. Normally $100. ParamountSports.com. Enter the code MMA Weekly. It's been another great show. Thank you for watching. Lee, appreciate you, buddy. Thanks for dropping the knowledge and the wisdom and for hooking our audience up with such a great deal. Appreciate you, brother. We'll talk to you next week. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim. Have a great weekend.
All right, there it is, fight fans. 5 for $50. Lee Sterling, 17 out of 20 times this year since May when the UFC came back. He's been a winner on those fight cards. 5-1-1 last week. You follow him into battle, have a chance to win some great money week after week here on the show. We appreciate it. UFC 253, a little over 24 hours away as I do this, and I can't wait for Israel Adesanya against Paulo Costa, 2 undefeated stars for the middleweight title, and of course, Dominic Reyes and Jan Blachowicz for the light heavyweight championship. You have so many other fights on this card that I can't wait to watch. It's going to be an unbelievable night at UFC 253. Again, 5 for $50, normally $100, 5 for $50 if you go to ParamountSports.com and put in the code MMA Weekly. 5 picks for $50, and that's unbelievable right there for your opportunity to win some money and have some fun. Hope you enjoyed the coverage in the show here. Don't forget to check out the interviews that I have with Captain Eric and Kelvin Gastelum breaking down the main event, Adesanya versus Costa. It's Cage Side Seat on MMA Weekly, the best MMA talk with the biggest names in the sport from the best seat in the house. I'm Jim Grieshaber. Call me Gries. Until next time, fight fans, keep your game tight and your mind right.